Hi folks, thanks for stopping by. Are you in the mood for something spooky? I hope you are. I've been deeply fascinated by this book lately, and I wanted to share with you. It's called Tales from the Grid Square by Nick Orton. It's a collection of short stories about paranormal happenings in the various military branches. There's ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, mysterious voices, all kinds of other creepy stuff. Since it's more of a collection than a novel, I've been skimming the book, looking for stories that interest me. I figured I'd give you guys a review and share some of my favorite excerpts. It's hard to review a book like this, but I'll give it my best shot. Most of the stories seem to be written out exactly as they were submitted to the author, so there's some spelling and grammar issues that tripped me up a bit. Another thing I struggled with was acronyms. I know military branches all love their acronyms, and there's a glossary in the back of the book, but unfortunately it doesn't include all of them, so I had to Google a few. Not really a big deal, I sort of expected it. But I imagine for other people, having to stop and translate certain things is probably frustrating. It slows down the reading, which kills the mood the story's setting. I have a feeling this wasn't written or assembled, I guess you could say, with civilians in mind. On the positive side, there's quite a variety in the book, which is great. I'd probably be a little bored if they all turned out to have the exact same formula. As to the veracity of these stories, I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. That's not the point. I'm not here to debate if spirits or cryptids are real. I'm just here for the fun of it. And they are fun if you like being creeped out. If ghost stories aren't your cup of tea, though, I definitely wouldn't recommend this book to you. As a note, a lot of these stories contain quite a bit of swearing. Personally, I'm not offended by that, but I know many people are. As I read these excerpts, I plan on leaving the swearing intact, so if you don't like that, I'd suggest a different video. I just published one on the Thresher. Go give that a watch. Like I said before, I have a handful of excerpts I'd like to share. These are the ones that creep me out the most, the ones that made me wonder, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I did. The first story comes from the U.S. Army. It's called Fort Myer. I was a private in the old guard up until sergeant. It's not shocking that a base adjacent/connected to Arlington National Cemetery, which has 400,000 deceased, would be haunted. You knew the base was haunted. 2 companies were decimated, and suddenly we hear someone walking down the side steps, which was unusual, wearing the ceremonial shoes called steels. It's very distinctive, like tap shoes. Suddenly, an entirely ceremonial dressed old guard soldier is walking in front of us, but we can see right through him to the other hallway. He's walking as if heading out to a funeral with a rifle. He was in the old uniform that had the long service stripes. As soon as he's about midway to the door, he disappears. I turn to my runner and say, "You saw that, right?" The kid looks at me like, "Fuck yes, I saw that." It wasn't uncommon to see strange things, especially by Section 7A, where lights or orbs were seen a lot. 7A is in the middle of the cemetery, far away from any actual lights. One night, another time I'm doing change quarters, I head downstairs to lay on one of the couches in the command hallways. Old guard companies. My cat has arrived. Old guard companies are like U-shaped frat houses. The top is the platoon off-post rooms. Mid-floors are barracks, and basements are command posts. So I'm lying down on this couch reading a book, and I can feel someone watching me at the end of a long hallway that just turns black, like Fanta black. As I look up, getting chills, this dark figure turns and walks down the other side of the hallway, a complete outline of a tall soldier. I lift my book and go, whatever. This ghost wanted my attention because it came right to the edge of the light, so the next time it was right upon me. Seeing these things often, I raised my book and said, "Go away, I'm not in the mood." After that, the feeling of being watched lifted. Besides the new barracks, all the old companies have this feeling. Like I said, being attached to Arlington National Cemetery, it's not uncommon to see many strange things. I picked that story because the idea of just telling a ghost, go away, I don't have time for you, was really funny to me. So that's why I picked that one. This next story is from a trainee. It's called Land Nav Witch. So I went through the 22 weeks of infantry, 1 station unit training, and the worst experience I had was the individual Nightland Nav. I was in the middle of the swamp around 0200 looking at my map. Suddenly, every hair in my body has stood on end, and my red light flickers. I turn it off and start looking around when I spot the silhouette of a woman in what I can only describe as a pioneer's outfit. I looked away for a second and looked back. Nothing. I told myself that I was seeing shit, picked a direction I thought was good, and started walking. I started hearing the crunching and breaking of leaves in rhythm with my step behind me, as if someone was matching my pace, and my hair stood up again. I stopped and looked behind me. Nothing. I continued walking. The same thing happened. Looked again. Nothing. I decided that 3 points was plenty for tonight and started booking it. As I'm running, I hear and see something jumping from tree to tree, keeping pace with me as I cut through the woods, sprinting full speed. I make it to the starting point, turn in my shit, and sit on my gear. Another guy comes running in about 15 minutes later. We still have 2 hours left at this point, so it makes no sense why he would be in a hurry. He does his shit, sit next to me, turns to me. "Dude, did you have a point in the swamp?" I gesture at my boots and pants. "Yeah, can't you tell?" "Yeah, sorry. But anyway, did you see a woman in a pioneer outfit?" "Yeah." I was writing down my point info when my light started flickering, and I heard something in the tree above me. I looked up and saw her sitting in a tree above the point, just staring down at me with lifeless eyes and an empty face. I ran faster than I ever have and didn't stop till I got here. It's at this point where the guy sitting behind us leans forward. "You all saw her too?" We nod. I started walking into the swamp when I saw her sit up out of the water and slowly turned to look at me. I froze and I only broke out of it when the LT walked up behind me and asked what I was looking at. I looked at him and pointed, but when I did, she was gone. No noise, nothing. This kid was an honest dude, and I could tell by the look in his eye that he wasn't fucking with us. That story is terrifying, and I do not like the idea of a random ghost or witch hanging in a tree and staring at me. So that one was unsettling, and that's why I picked it. The next one is from the Marine Corps, and it is called Jumper. Okinawa is the most haunted place the U.S. military is stationed on. One night, I was asleep in my barracks room when I heard a blood-curdling scream. Now that's not too abnormal for the barracks. Everyone's always up to something. But this was different. It woke me from my sleep and instantly put me on edge. The scream sounded like it was a few floors above me, like someone had opened up their window and screamed into the night. I got up to look outside to make sure we didn't have a jumper. As I popped my head out the window and looked up, a white form fell right by my face. I looked down to see a body on the ground. I left the window to grab my shoes and get help. When I got outside, there was no one on the ground. I later learned that a few years before this, a young woman jumped off the roof of the building. The idea of going to help someone that you think has jumped and then getting down there and finding absolutely nothing just gave me chills. So that's why I picked that one. I hope you can hear the kitten purring. She wanted to be involved, and she wouldn't be quiet until I let her in. So you might be able to hear her purr. Just a bit of a break from the scary stuff. You're a very good kitty. Now I gotta go back to what I'm doing. The next couple of stories are from the U.S. Navy, and the first one is U.S. Monterey. My ship had a contractor die during ship construction in Radar 1. The guy was crushed between the forward spy radar array and the bulkhead. In general, Radar 1 and the O3 levels have some spooky things going on, such as footsteps when there's no one there, valves closing for no reason, and if you go into the space and try to talk to this contractor, he will slam the door shut, or something like that. In Key West for a port visit, I think it was about January 2011, the hatch to get onto the IFF platform had broken hinges, so once opened from below when standing on the ladder, it just fell out onto the platform. The platform had antennas going around the outer edge in a big circle, and the hole you climbed through, the hatch covered that, was how to climb up onto the platform. We were up there a few hours, taking measurements, and decided to break for lunch. We left everything up there because we were coming back after. Tools, cables, the hatch laying open out on the deck. While eating up in our shop, just down the passageway from the bottom of the mast where we were working, this chief comes running in, screaming about how he was nearly just killed because of our negligence. It turned out that hatch, which weighed at least 20 pounds, had somehow fallen from the platform down to the O3 levels, missing the chief by only a couple feet. We couldn't believe it. No one was up there, and it couldn't have moved on its own. The hole it covered had a 2-inch lip where it rose 2 inches above the deck, so that it couldn't have slid and fallen through. The outer edge of the platform had antennas that came up to about 10 inches above the deck, and there was no space between the deck and the antennas. No explanation for how it could have fallen. That chief was a total asshole, constantly screaming at his division, getting in their faces, and cursing so loud we could hear it down the hallway. I believe that ghost from Radar 1 tried to kill him for being such a piece of shit by throwing the hatch down at him. You know what? Good for that contractor ghost. Maybe he had a terrible chief when he was in the military. Saw that and decided to take his revenge. The next story is called Shipmates. I was part of the crew of the second ship that had collisions at sea in Singapore, where 10 of my shipmates perished in their sleep. We were docked in Changi, and we turned the mess decks into more of a lounge since food service stopped on the ship, and and we get food deliveries. We had igloo jugs filled with water or tea for some refreshments while doing ship work throughout the day. One of my GM1s had a mid-watch, so we went to the mess decks to grab a coffee. He realized there was another sailor across the mess by the jugs. His movements looked like he was getting water and drinking it. Then he walked casually out the other door with his back turned without saying anything, so my GM1 didn't see who it was. Being in the ship, we have a few common gestures to each other when we realize someone else is in the same space. We look at each other and say hey or nod to acknowledge each other's presence. This struck him as odd, but it was almost midnight, so he wasn't really in the greeting mood. Then it hit him. The slick-backed hair, 6'4" figure, and sleeve tattoo could never be mistaken for anyone but one of the sailors that died a few weeks before and still was currently interred within berthing. It took a while to get the bodies out because the water inside the berthing where people drowned was holding the weight of that part of the ship. My GM1 is a quiet and straightforward guy and not keen to joke about something like that, especially when it was related to the collision. Another story. When the chaos happened during the collision, the whole crew was running around to get to their respective repair lockers. One of my shipmates accounted for one of his friends during muster because he ran into him. My shipmate was wearing firefighting gear and helmet in the dark, so we only got a good look at the name tag of the person. But the person told him, "Please do a good job of saving everyone else," in the familiar voice of his friend, then moved out of sight around a corner. My shipmate could never explain or grasp it when he found out that his friend, who he knows he saw, never made it out of berthing alive. That one is heartbreaking. The line, "Please do a good job of saving everyone else," that's what I really like about this book. Not only is it spooky and interesting, but it really gets me in the feels sometimes. The next stories are from the Marine Corps. This one is based in Okinawa in Japan. That's where most of the stories in this section are. This one is called Cries from the Jungle. Seeing your stories has motivated me to tell my own story. I used to work day and night in the Mons area of Kadena, big jungle area next to the base. Easy to get lost in, thick jungle that barely lets light through on the brightest of days. Anyways, one night, it's a little after 0100, and we're parking our 7-ton truck in our gated area. Winds are blowing stronger than usual, and I'm holding the gate when my lieutenant corporal is parking the truck, and my staff sergeant is ground guiding. Despite all the noise from the wind and the truck, I start to hear a baby's cry. Not like an animal or something, but a legitimate cry from a baby in the jungle about 50 meters from us. I have no idea why I thought it was a good idea, but I started walking towards the jungle, thinking I would rescue this baby. Sergeant yelled at me to come back, and at that exact moment, the cry stopped. I got this incredibly eerie feeling from the jungle. I told him what I heard, and he said he's heard the same thing before, but figured nothing good comes out of the jungle at night. The next day, I'm talking with some of the other guys, and one of them tells me that the previous year, he and another Marine were driving by the same area and almost crashed their truck after the driver swerved because of a baby in the middle of the road. Others had seen or heard things in that jungle. Dudes have heard Japanese voices in the wilderness, babies crying out in the darkness, people walking around. It makes sense since Okinawa had such intense fighting and so many lives lost. The whole island is very spooky. I don't know what kind of person this individual was, but they are far braver than me, because if I heard crying from the damn jungle in the middle of the night, I would be sprinting back to my barracks to hide So they are braver and perhaps a little less wise than me. The next story is called Bangor, Washington. So I was originally security forces for the United States Marine Corps in Bangor, Washington, and I worked the waterfront for a little over 2.5 years. That post isn't stood anymore to my knowledge. I'm not positive. I'm not stationed there anymore. We'd have shadow figures when I was a junior, constantly at the north end of the waterfront, randomly at night, creeping around on the trestles. There was an entity people called the JIG, Jawless Indian Girl, that would haunt the main road we made moves on. Screams late at night at certain piers, supposedly a haunted painting. We'd randomly see these tall things. I mean, pretty tall, too. Around 8 to 11 feet, roughly. You only see them at nighttime, never when foggy. Super skinny beings, and they could move pretty quick. We were standing post one time, and my senior glanced to check on the cameras that covered 360 degrees of our post. I saw one at the end of the pier, near the main road, probably 125 to 150 yards away. He came down the trestle, ran quickly towards our post, and disappeared maybe 10 yards before coming to our door. Later that night, we heard something banging loudly on the front door. You would open the front door, and as soon as the door opened, the rear door would get a bang on it. Cameras picked up no one, and the post 25 yards away didn't even hear or see anything. As for the GIG, I never had a solid encounter seeing her with my own eyes, but I was on watch one night, and on my rest cycle. I was sleeping in a pretty big berthing area all to myself. I turned off the lights and racked out. I woke up around 02 to 03 with the red lights on and goosebumps. I got up to turn the lights off and heard tiny footsteps behind me. Spooked, I bolted to the watchroom where the other person was at. Footsteps followed me until getting into the main room. It was just a creepy feeling. The screams I never personally heard, but my seniors heard them when they worked at Bangor as boots. They were building a pier, and the only way to get there was by boat. They experienced blood-curdling screams happening in the middle of the night out there. The base police would get phone calls from that specific pier same time frame, but no one would ever be on the other end. There's a picture rumored to have the GIG appear in and out of it. It's a painting of the northwestern waterfront, the general area. According to some, she would appear in the painting in the woods. Other days she wouldn't. Some shadows or beings daunted post standards on that area's northern edge. They appeared mid-morning, early afternoon in the bushes, maybe 50 yards from the post. Happened to me and a buddy. Maybe a 4.5 foot by 2 to 3 foot blob. Made a shallow, growling sound and moved slowly towards the woods. We were curious and started following it and took the dirt road to the west of the woods. It was slowly moving further down, parallel to the road, but almost into the woods. We started walking ourselves, following it. We both noticed no more sounds from the birds or nature, and quickly got back on the road, went condition 1 each, and walked back to post. I had a very bad feeling the rest of the night, and was pretty sick the rest of the day from it, throwing up, headaches. Finally, I was told a story before I arrived at Bangor. When my team leader was there, someone fucked up and had to run back to the quarters. My team leader then followed behind in a Bearcat. As they were running, the dude who fucked up and my team leader both saw something matching their jog in the woods to their left, the western part, where the road wraps around. My team leader ordered the guy to get in the Bearcat, and they drove back. Later on, if you asked separately, they would tell you the same thing. They described it as a large, maybe furry creature, matching their speed on all fours. Very big, bigger than a black bear, and much bigger than the black-tailed deer that live out there. At the very end of this book is a collection of stories from foreign militaries, and I don't want to continue this much longer. I feel like if I do, I'd be kind kind of taking a pretty significant chunk out of this book, but I really wanted to share this final one from Russian Armed Forces. It freaked me out, and I wanted to include this one. The title is No Borders Hold Us. I have a story from my uncle who was in the Red Army. He was from Uzbekistan, but was conscripted and stationed in Siberia back when it was under the USSR. My uncle was tasked to work at a radar station. Basically, this turned out to be the most desolate and boring assignment possible. Nothing ever happened there, and there was literally nothing in the sky. One day, late into the winter, he suddenly starts getting contacts on his radar. He's startled, as he's never seen anything out there before. He starts getting more and more contacts on screen and begins to think to himself, holy fuck, it's happening. Dozens and dozens more blips begin to appear, and everyone in his station begins to fear this is the beginning of the end. He tries to make contact on the open mic radio and demands identification. At first there's nothing, then a scratchy response. It's a voice, but it's too distorted to be anything human. We are the unseen. We go where we wish. No borders hold us. Then silence. All the blips vanish from the screen at once. It's as if they were never there to begin with. My uncle believes they were jinn from his Islamic faith. What he heard the voice say matches what the Islamic world knows of the jinn, or so he believes. I don't know much about the Islamic faith, and I would never pretend to know anything. But something about that story just shook me to my core, and the idea of an entity spoken about in centuries and centuries of tradition and religion, I did not like that. I mean, I did. It was very good, but oh, that was really spooky. So, that's about all I've got for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that I can continue to provide you some entertainment, or at the very least, bore you to sleep. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a good night.